Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of the XFL Weekly Show on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the XFL Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I'd like to welcome in my co-host, the immortal Brian Schmidt. How you doing, Schmitty?
I'm doing good, but, I just realized as you were doing that, being the XFL is owned by Vince McMahon, you and I should have, entrance music or something.
Well, we're going to work on that, but we got to have something that's not copyrighted or YouTube will shut it down.
That is true. But I don't know. We got to work on that because I feel like we need to have entrance music now.
Okay. What would be your entrance song?
Boy, there's so many I could go with. I have to think about it though.
I think I would go with Sheena Easton's Sugar Walls.
I can see this.
That's kind of scary that just popped into my head.
That is actually really scary. That kind of makes me a little nervous. So.
Why? That was an awesome song, and she was smoking hot in the mid-'80s.
I know, and actually she was smoking hot in the mid-'90s, too.
Yeah. I don't know what she looks like now, but I'm sure it's not as good as it was then. All right, Brian, we've done an XFL or an NFL show for a few years. XFL, last year with the Alliance League, I remember watching the first game and thinking, that's all right. But with this, I watched the majority of all four games, and I came away really impressed because, to me, there's innovations here that I think we'll see in the NFL within the next decade.
Yeah, that was really my take on it as well. Obviously, being, we both are in football, so obviously there was going to be that interest there. But I was the same way when I went and watched the AAL last year. It was kind of like, this is okay, but from the kickoff, and that might be the best place to start. To me, this kickoff, what the XFL is doing on this kickoff, absolutely to me makes the most sense. Because the one thing that I feel like the NFL has done is they've taken away, and you see it especially in college football too, where they've really taken it away. But the NFL has really taken away the idea of big kickoff returns and things like that with a lot of the rules they have. To me, I think this is a great rule for kickoffs. I love the onside kick of running a play. Doing that kind of stuff. It just, to me, there's a lot of innovations here that I think the NFL really will take a strong look at because, they talk about wanting to make the game safer, but in doing so, sometimes when they want to make the game safer, they take the football out of the game. And I think there's some innovations here that allow football to still be football.
Yeah, because when you look at it, when we were growing up, 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, guys like Billy White Shoes Johnson, Devin Hester, those guys wouldn't have existed really that much in the NFL that we see today because one of the most exciting things is to see a guy take it to the house on a kickoff return, and that's pretty much been eliminated because it seems like 9 out of 10 kicks are just touchbacks anyways.
Yeah, you're everything's a touchback. Occasionally you're going to get a kick returner that's going to return the ball, 7-8 yards deep, but even that is starting to happen less and less because you're returning a kick 7-8 yards deep in the end zone and you're getting tackled at the 18-yard line. It's not really what you want. So I just think that the innovations, the things that they did rule wise, and I'll tell you this, I also love the speed of the game. And this coming from an indoor arena guy that really, the reason why I coach that stuff is because I love the speed of the game. I thought the pace of the XFL game, to me, felt really good. Watching it on TV, it flowed. It didn't feel at all like some NFL games. It seems like the ebb and flow just changes so drastically to sometimes, if you feel like you're watching a turtle race. This, for the most part, every game, the flow of the game I thought was really good.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it has over the Alliance is there's a lot more guys here that actually played in NFL games where the Alliance,
Yeah,
I had Anthony Servino, who I do the daily NFL show with. He brought it up that he had it on in the background. He wasn't really watching it, but the thing that got his attention was the fact that, he kept hearing these guys talk about, well, this guy played in the NFL for 2 years, this guy played in the NFL for 3 years. And it's like I brought up to him. I said the reason the Alliance didn't say that is because they didn't have that many of those guys.
that's exactly right. There were so many guys that, and I'll tell you, from my standpoint, the first game, which was the Seattle DC game, I didn't get to watch until I came home, and rather than watching where it was, I just went back from the start and watched it, and fast forward through the commercials and all that, and it immediately got my attention because you're seeing guys that were in the NFL, and you're seeing guys that Eli Rogers. Here's a guy that was with Pittsburgh. Here he is. You've seen these guys, but I was really impressed with the play. The one thing about the AAL, if you remember especially the first 3 or 4 weeks, it just seemed like every game was just not a lot of scoring. It just seemed like it was, it didn't flow. The offenses were stagnant. You didn't see that here. And you saw good defense, you saw good offense, you saw good special. You saw everything in the first week of the XFL, and so that, to me, that makes it more exciting. And I've already really committed myself to watching these games, not because just I'm a football junkie, but because I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me is it seemed like the fans did. We wrote a few articles last week. We had talked about doing an XFL show. I figured we'd wait and see how week one went. But the way this is blown up on social media, even guys like J.J. Watt tweeting about it and how great the football was. I mean, it's not NFL football, but it's not that far away. And when you throw in the innovations, it makes it a different game, which I think sets it apart from what leagues like the Alliance tried to do, or the UFL, which were basically just playing NFL brand football with players that were nowhere NFL players. And we'll go ahead and transition. Let's talk a little bit about last week's games, week one. And I want to start off with the Houston Roughnecks, who hosted the LA Wildcats. And Roughnecks quarterback P.J. Walker's a guy I remember from Temple who threw for over 10,000 yards at Temple. This was a guy, when I wrote my season preview, was the guy that really stood out to me that would be a hell of a player in this league and possibly be able to play in the NFL. In the first game, 4 touchdowns, 272 yards, 23 for 39 passing. You want to talk a little bit about Walker and what you thought of him from game one?
Yeah, I was, and obviously this game had a little bit of interest to me because I'm from an outdoor guy, I've been an air raid guy and a run and shoot guy, and I'm a big June Jones fan. And so I watched this game, and the first thing that just came out to me was the command that Walker had of the offense. I mean, he came out in that first drive, a couple short passes and throws a dime, on a long pass for touchdown, and you just could see he had command of the offense. If I'm an NFL scout in a league that needs quarterbacks, I definitely am going to put a red mark around this guy and watch him, because there were some things there that I thought, were very NFL-esque in terms of a guy that you're going to look at and go, we got to keep an eye on this guy, because if he continues to play like this, why would you not want to bring this guy into an NFL camp?
Yeah.
I was very impressed. I was impressed with, and also, I mean, he had 4 carries for 26 yards, but everything he did, just there was a command to it, and you could really see that, especially as the game went on in the second half. I mean, he was commanding that offense, and the run and shoot is not an easy offense to come out in your first game and show a command of, and he really did. So I think this is a guy that definitely, I agree with you, people need to keep an eye on, because this is a guy that could be a guy that the NFL's got to look at.
Yeah, and LA, of course, did not have what they thought would be their starting quarterback, Josh Johnson, because of injury. Backup Charles Kanoff came in and actually looked really good for a while. They had a 14-6 lead. They kind of dropped off from there. I think Houston just had too much talent for him. And then, in something that would happen in the NFL, Pepper Johnson, after just one game in the team's history, was summarily fired by the Wildcats as the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I did not understand that at all. Immediately, actually, I made a comment to somebody when I saw that. I said, boy, it's a tough crowd in that office in Los Angeles. After one game, you get fired. And a lot of times with something like that, it's usually there was some sort of disagreement in terms of, why did you do this? Or, well, I wanted to do this, but you did this. There's something just more of a butting heads, I'm sure. But, at the end of the day, that's not a good look on an organization. And so now, once again, another one of these LA teams that and you see this with through the years that, all of a sudden right out of the gate is causing turmoil. So it'll be interesting to see how they go on from this.
Well, I think the thing that will be most interesting for me with LA is to see what kind of a crowd they get in LA, because we all know in the past the LA Express have Steve Young. They're playing in the 100,000 seat stadium, the Memorial Coliseum, and 2,000 people show up. And we've seen the Chargers and Rams, especially the Chargers, have had a hard time putting butts in the seats. So I think if there's any possible weak link in this league with a team, it would be LA, and that's not because of the product on the field, but whether the crowd is really going to buy into this.
Well, I remember when LA got announced, the one thing that I immediately said in my house is, here again is a team in LA. LA is such a tough market for a league like the XFL because you've got so many, not only pro sports options, but so many entertainment options. And I hate to call XFL minor league, but let's be honest, they're not the NFL yet. That's hard in a market like LA. It's just hard, and so it's going to be something to see what kind of crowd they get. I hope that it's a decent crowd to where maybe they can start generating that interest, being that it's a spring league, because I think this league has a lot to offer. I agree with you that I think LA is definitely the weakest link, because that's a market that has not supported. They sometimes have a hard time supporting, as you said, the Chargers, things like that. So I don't know how this is going to work.
In LA, if you're not the Dodgers or the Lakers, you might have issues. I mean, if you look at UCLA basketball, when they're not very good, there's 6,000 or 7,000 people in Pauley Pavilion.
Yes.
So
we'll see how it goes.
All right, let's move on to what was the first game and had a peak of 4 million viewers watching it. The Seattle Dragons against the DC Defenders. The standout to me, once again, was the quarterback, which is another difference between this and the Alliance League. Cardell Jones was a star on the offense. He completed 16 of 26 passes for 291 yards with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also led the team in rushing, and the defense in the second half was kind of overwhelming here. The Dragons, of course, lost their quarterback, Brandon Silvers, who got an ankle injury, which kind of killed this team's chances here. But Cardell Jones is a guy that came out of Ohio State, I think, a year or two early, that needs to be developed, and this could be a godsend for Cardell Jones.
Yeah, and when we were talking about Houston, I think Cardell Jones is another quarterback that the NFL is going to keep an eye on, because, again, when he came out of Ohio State, it was definitely a year too early, at least a year too early. He had that great freshman run. So there was a lot of momentum there, but he was a guy that was, even though he was having success at Ohio State, he tended to be late on throws. It was just fortunate that sometimes you can get away with that at the college level. You can be late on throws and still be okay. You're not going to get away with that in the NFL. You're not going to get away with that in professional football. So now the XFL, he now has that opportunity to continue his development. And I was pretty impressed. He had a little bit of a slow start, but then he ended up 16-26, couple touchdowns. And again, as the game went on, he got better. And I will also say this on Seattle's side, and this is just because of a name that is near and dear to my heart from when I was in Carolina is Prohl. We practiced in Carolina is actually owned by Ricky Prohl. Ricky Prohl was there every day, and he'd be there working out with his sons and I was impressed by Prohl. Prohl reminded me a lot watching him in this game of Wes Welker. Just those really tight slot, solid routes, caught the ball well. And he's another guy that I think from a receiver standpoint that you got to keep an eye on because the NFL loves those slot receivers. And he's a guy that I think can, if he can continue his development, that now maybe he's going to get that opportunity.
Yeah, and like I said, I found this game enjoyable to watch. I think Seattle, when you look at the roster, on paper, they look like maybe the worst team. I hate to say that, but they do. But the other thing that stands out to me about Seattle, and we'll get to this when we talk about the games coming up this week, is the fact that, number one, DC, I loved the game because they played in a small stadium and with a big crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, we both coached indoor before, where if you play in a stadium that seats 15 or 20,000, and you got 4,000, it seems like there's nobody there, and it just made the game seem more important, if that makes any sense.
It absolutely did, and that was the biggest takeaway. And I think the XFL, if they planned it this way, which I'm probably pretty sure they did, what a great idea to have your first game in that stadium that was near capacity, if not capacity. It certainly looked really good on TV. So now people are watching this game. If you remember the AAL, the first game they had, simultaneously, one was in Orlando and one was in San Antonio. And San Antonio had, 16,000, 17,000 in a 75,000, 80,000 seat stadium. That doesn't look great. It looks okay. It doesn't look great. Orlando had, 8,000 people in a 65,000 seat stadium. It doesn't look great on TV. This game on TV, if you're just a casual observer and you're looking at this and you're looking at this crowd, you're going, hey, man, this is something I need to watch because look at this crowd. Yeah. So I thought it was a great move. And it definitely, for the casual fan, it definitely is going to pique an interest when you turn it on and you see this great crowd. So I think that, we'll get to the New York Guardians later, but, I think sometimes with these big stadiums, I think the New York Guardians should have been playing in where they originally had talked about, which was the Red Bull Stadium, which is the other, soccer team there.
Where I'd have put them? I'd have put them at Rutgers on a campus.
That wouldn't have probably been bad either.
Because then you got a built-in crowd there, and only a moron could have a team on a college campus and not be able to sell tickets to it.
Yeah, but
dollar beers.
Yeah, but I mean, you could put them at Red Bull and do the same thing. I think that the idea, I thought the DC Defenders Stadium was perfect. I'm interested to see, Houston, they're playing on Houston's College Field. It looked good until they would do the wide shot, and then you'd be like, okay, well, the lower bowl's full, but the upper bowl, but that's how they sold the tickets to fill the lower bowl. So
yeah,
if they would have stayed away from the wide shot,
why the Bengals move everybody down on Sundays, and you never see the upper deck of Paul Brown Stadium.
Right. The New York Guardians, I mean, it just, when you look at it for what it was a good crowd. When you look at it for where it's at, it looked like, piss hole in a snowbank. It just was small.
Yeah, and I think that's what brings me to Seattle, though, because Seattle is also using where the Seahawks play. And the thing that stood out to me was on Monday, they had to open up the rest of the stadium because of ticket sales. And from what I saw today, they've sold 28,000 tickets for the game, and they're expecting 30,000 or more for this game. So hopefully New York will get to the same point, which I think they could, because let's face it, if you're a New York fan, if the Guardians are good, which they look like they might be, and you want to see a winning team, you haven't got that with the Jets and the Giants anytime recent. So it may work there. It may work out all right for them. And I would say this, Seattle to me would be, do you remember the old Denver Gold?
Yep.
In the USFL, if you remember, the Denver Gold had like 40, 45,000 at Mile High Stadium almost every game. And I think Seattle is the kind of place that supports their teams to such an extent. If you look, even their soccer team, I don't know that for sure, but I was talking to Joe Kelly today, and he told me the soccer team did really good selling tickets there. But the Mariners always draw good. The Seahawks are always packed. They're getting an NHL team there because of that fan support. So hopefully we see, it'd be nice to see 35, 40,000 people there. That would be huge for this league because, like I said, last year people said that they liked this league, but then when you get to week 2, nobody cared. And the one thing I have noticed is tonight, before we did the show, I went to like the Facebook pages for most of these teams, and most of them went from 700 or 800 to anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 just in the last couple days. So I think social media and the way that Vince McMahon, Oliver Luck have run the social media side of this has been huge in promoting this. And I think a lot of those NFL players gave a lot of validity to this league when you've got them to, tweeting about it, talking about how much they love it.
Absolutely. And, first of all, let's not forget Vince McMahon is a, promotional genius for what he's done, with WWE and all that stuff. But you also, if you go back to the 1 year of the XFL that had its problems, they did a lot of gimmicky stuff. But for the most part, if you go back and look, a lot of the teams in the old XFL, I mean, it wasn't that they didn't draw. They had people in the stands. It just, the way they ran the league and what they tried to do, it just kind of turned people to where, it's a gimmick. They changed the mindset coming into this where, they made this about football and they didn't make it about gimmicks. The rules innovations, I think some people at first were like, well, it's just a gimmick. No, these are actually rules that make sense. It's not a gimmick. You don't see them having gimmick announcers, where back in the old XFL, they had WWE guys doing like color commentary. Yes. And, the one I remember the most is Jerry Lawler, because I just remember listening to him going, oh God, why don't do this? So, I just think they've done a lot of right things. And I'm 4 hours from Seattle, and I actually was looking at tickets, and I was kind of like, wow, there's so many grayed out areas. And then when I dug deeper into it, I found out the same thing you did is, they've had to open up more of the stadium because the places that, they're already sold out. So they've opened up they're opening up certain sections, and as those get filled, they're opening up more. And it's like, man, this might be the place to be. So I really am excited to see what kind of crowd they have.
Hey, if you ever want to go to a game, we could get you credentialed probably.
There you go. Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind that.
There you go. You take Billy as your photographer.
Yep.
All right.
I'm not even kidding you.
I'm not kidding either.
Me neither.
You just got to have a really good camera to be able to pull that off, because we don't want to look like we're faking it just to get in there.
True.
All right, let's move on to the Guardians, who you talked about before. The Guardians' defense was really good, but I've found that since he's been out of college, Aaron Murray makes almost every defense look really good, so I wouldn't read too much in there. I think Matt McGloin is a competent quarterback. I don't think it's much more than that. But when I watched Murray play, he was 16 to 34 for 231, 2 touchdowns, including 1 thrown in the end zone. And out of that 16 for 34, he was 3 for 3 to start the game. So my question is, why in the hell wasn't Quentin Flowers put in this game and allowed to throw the ball?
And I don't understand that either, because when I watched this game, you would see Quentin Flowers line up the quarterback for a play or two here, but it was at one point I'm thinking to myself, it's probably a good time to make a switch here, and they really didn't. They just kind of kept with that same thing. You see Aaron, and all of a sudden you see Flowers line up for a play, and then back to it didn't make any sense, and I felt like they were running the ball, or for a while they were running the ball fairly decently. I think the running back had like 80 yards rushing, and I mean, Flowers, when he ran the ball, it's like, make the switch, because you've got a dual threat quarterback that's, when he's in there, is making something happen. Give him a chance, and they never did. And that was kind of to their undoing. And you're right about New York. I mean, their quarterback situation, he's competent. I don't think you're going to win a championship with him. But defensively, they played great, but then you got to look at the whole situation with Murray. So I don't know that we really know how good or bad New York Guardians are.
I will give you this, though. With the talent they've got in their secondary, I think their defense is that good. And Matt McGloin, I think, can win a championship in this league, but they've got to have a running game to go with him. And they did not have a running game in that game, and that's the thing that would worry me the most if I was a Guardians fan.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is this, McGloin threw the ball 29 times. They only ran the ball 16 times in that game. So you're talking, less than 50 plays. And it was just very workman. I agree. I think defensively, especially their secondary, I think is pretty good. But you've really got to look at, if you're the Guardians, you've got to look at, you've got to be able to run the football. You got to be able to instead of having 16 carries, I'd like to see that number be in the 25 to 30 carries, where you're averaging 3 yards a carry, where you're not asking him to have to put it on his shoulders and throw and win the game, because I don't think he can. I think if you put him in a position to manage the game, play action, do that stuff, I think then he can have some effectiveness. But they got bailed out by their defense on this. There's no doubt.
Yeah, overall, I think the Guardians may be top half of this league just because of the defense. Like I said, I think McGloin's a decent enough quarterback to win something in this league, but without the running game, I think they'll have issues. Next up, the St. Louis Battlehawks beat the Dallas Renegades 15-9. This was a big upset because the Renegades were favored by, I think, 9.5 points going in it. They've got Bob Stoops, they've got Hal Mummy. Of course, they're running the air raid, but they weren't running it with Landry Jones. And Battlehawks quarterback Jordan Tamu, actually, to me, when they were running more zone read in the third and fourth quarters, I thought he looked really good. So I think St. Louis might have something with him.
Yeah, I thought there were two things that struck me in this game. One is I thought with him running zone read and doing some of the things that they did with him, I thought as the game went on, you could see that they've got something they can build off of. I thought from the Renegade standpoint, it's great when your quarterback can be 33 of 42, but he only had 209 yards passing. The receivers for the Renegades, it was really a matter of making a catch, getting tackled. You rarely saw them make anybody miss in space. And that's a concern, because part of the air raid is, being able to throw short and have your receivers be able to make people miss. And we did not see that. So that's got to be a little bit of a concern. You've got to look at, do we have the right receivers now? Because, I mean, when you look at the average, their top receiver had 6 catches for 43 yards, 4 catches for 40, 2 for 30. I mean, they had a lot of guys make catches, 6 for 29. You had a lot of guys make catches, but there was not a lot of yak yardage. I'm looking right now, and they had 11 guys make catches, and yet you look at the yardage, and the long of 12, long of 13, long of 21. That's not going to win an air raid. You got to have guys that can catch that 4 or 5 yard pass and turn that into.
Yep. How about this though, Brian? With the quarterback issues they have there, is it possible that kid's not comfortable in it and maybe wasn't making the right reads and getting it to the mismatches to get guys in space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's possible. Definitely there is some of that, but I also know that in watching the game, there was more than a few times where receivers were catching the ball in space, and it was a one-on-one tackle that was being made. So I think there's a combination of both, and I think that's going to be something that they've got to address because, listen, your backup quarterback went 33 of 42. You and I both know 33 of 42, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But when you only got 209 yards passing and then you start really digging in deeper and you start looking, man, people got to make somebody miss one-on-one in space, and that wasn't happening. So, I don't know. I don't know how to take the Renegades right now because in my mind, I thought this was going to be, definitely, if not the top team in the league, one of the top teams. And now I'm looking at this going, well, if your receivers ain't going to make them miss in space, it's kind of hard to be an air raid.
Yeah, most definitely. So, when we look at this, we look at the Battlehawks. I think the Battlehawks are a team that could be a contender here. This is going to be all dependent on, Tamu getting, playing a lot better than what he did. He wasn't terrible, but the second half is what we've got to see all the time. But the thing about the Battlehawks is defensively, I thought they were the most impressive team. And a lot of that had to do with what you're talking about with the tackling. Now, you had cornerback Darius Hillary, whose father, I believe his father's Ira Hillary, who played on the 88 Bengals Super Bowl team and has been a guest on our shows before. Actually, I just texted him a while ago to see if we could get him on one of our XFL shows. Had 8 tackles. Terrence Garvin, linebacker, had 9 tackles and a sack. And then on top of that, you've got Matt Jones, who ran the ball 85 yards on 21 carries. To me, this is a team, when I looked at them on paper before the season started, I wasn't really expecting a whole lot. But I look at them now, if they get some consistency at the quarterback position, they can run the ball and they can play defense. I mean, what else do you need?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, and I think you've really kind of hit the formula for St. Louis is going to be, Tamu is obviously, he's got to be a guy that doesn't make mistakes. And really, when you look at his stat line,
it was
the
good.
First thing that comes out is you think it's good. I mean, he had 77 yards rushing. He was 20 of 27. But when you watch the game, the mistakes that he made were in key situations, third down, things like that. But as the game went on, he got better. So having him be able to zone read and they RPO'd and they did some things where now he's effective. You're moving that and let this defense go because this is a good defense. And I was very impressed with the tackling in open space. Some really key coverage. There were some times they were in man coverage and they locked it down. They did a great play out of their linebacker. Just everything about what they did, to me, that screams a championship team. If your quarterback does the right plays, doesn't turn the ball over, your defense makes plays, that's a championship team. So I think this is a team that I saw. I don't know if it was. I think it was yours. I think you had them as maybe the third best team in the league. I want to say.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
I think
yeah.
I think that's I think that was very accurate. And I think now though, this is going to be a team to watch that maybe we're going to see move up because right now, obviously, to me, I think Dallas is definitely not the best team in the league right now. They've shown that. I really did like the DC Defenders. I liked what I saw there. I liked Houston, and I know Houston didn't get a lot of love from people at times, but I like Houston. I like what I saw in that one game. But this St. Louis team, I mean, you got a good offense, you've got a really good defense. That's an ingredient for a championship team.
Yeah, and it would not surprise me if they move up quickly. I think a lot of that's going to get Tamu, comfortable in the offense. I think this is a team that, as the season goes on, is progressively going to get better. I think they may have the highest ceiling in the league for a team. Let's go ahead and let's look at and pick the games this week. And we're going to start off with the St. Louis Battlehawks, who will go to Houston to battle the Roughnecks. This is Jordan Tamu, and that Battlehawks offense. I keep wanting to say Battle Axe. That would be a badass name for a team, by the way.
Yeah, and I keep thinking, man, I really hope you haven't called your wife a battle axe today.
No, I never used the word, so that's why. But the St. Louis Battlehawks will travel to Houston to play the Roughnecks. You got P.J. Walker, who's coming off a great performance. You got Jordan Tamu, who's coming off a very good second half. You got a team that can run the ball, the Roughnecks. I mean, these, to me, could be the two best teams. As I said, in my top three, I would have those two in the D.C. Defenders. When I look at this game, I think game tempo is what's going to decide this, because I think St. Louis is going to want to slow the game down. I think Houston wants to speed it up with P.J. Walker. And my prediction on this is I look for Walker to be the difference in a good game that the Roughnecks break open late. I'm going to take Houston's offense in this, 27-17. To win it right at the end. But I think this is a game that's like 17-17 going to the fourth quarter. But I think the game tempo is everything in this game.
I agree. And to me, this game is definitely a toss-up. I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to take St. Louis, even though there's a part of me that really thinks Houston's going to win this. But I think St. Louis, if they can run the football as they did in the second half against Dallas, and they can play that defense how they played against Dallas, I think they may prove that right now they may be the best team in the league. And I think this is a game for either one of these teams to start generating that, hey, we're definitely a championship contender. But I'm going to take St. Louis in this one. I think they're going to come out. They're going to be able to run the football. They're going to RPO, and I think defensively, I think they're going to do some things. I think P.J. Walker will get his yards and he'll get completions, but it's kind of the same theory. When you can make a 5-6 yard pass be a 5-6 yard pass, that's not what the run and shoot wants. So I'm going to take St. Louis mainly because of their defense.
All right, next up, we got the Dallas Renegades at the LA Wildcats. I haven't heard if Josh Johnson is going to play yet, but I have heard Landry Jones is going to play. This is in LA. Both teams need to win badly here. 10-game season, you don't want to start off 0-2, Brian. Who do you like here?
With Landry Jones coming back, I'm going to take Dallas mostly for a couple reasons. One is, Landry Jones is the guy that Dallas is their starting quarterback. He's going to play real. But two, with LA firing their defensive coordinator, what kind of turmoil is that going to cause? What kind of ripple effect is that going to cause with players? And you're going to play an offense that now has their quarterback back. So hopefully that's going to help Dallas, and I think it will. I think Dallas will win this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Dallas will win. I'm only going to take it. I think it'll be something like 21-17. I think the Wildcats will hang in because, let's face it, Brian, if I'd have told you 4 years ago we're going to talk about a professional football game and you're going to say a team's going to win because Landry Jones is the quarterback, what kind of odds would you have given me on that?
Yeah, that would not have been good odds. But, I will say this in defense of Landry Jones, though, is there were times when he was in Pittsburgh, he played a heck of a lot better than people get credit for. But be that as it may, I think he's in the right situation to be successful. So, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But, yeah, I think it'll be a close game. I think Dallas will win.
All right, next up, the Tampa Bay Vipers will travel to Seattle to play the Dragons. I'm going to take the Dragons in this. I think the home crowd will put them over the top. And to tell you the truth, the Vipers, I think, when you look at the players on their team, have one of the better rosters in this league. But if they're going to play Aaron Murray, I don't see them winning this game. If they play Quentin Flowers, if you were to tell me right now Quentin Flowers is the starter, I may pick Tampa Bay in this game. But right now I'm going to take Seattle in a close one, Brian.
I'm going to take Seattle as well. I agree with you when we talk about Seattle's roster. When you looked at it beginning, may be the worst roster. But I think in this case, Aaron Murray is not a guy that I'm impressed with. And if they play him, I think he's going to struggle. Seattle showed me a little bit more than I thought I was going to see against DC Defenders. And they're going to play in front of a really good crowd, which is going to do nothing but bolster their players and get them excited to play. So I think Seattle will win this game. Now, and I agree with you also. If Flowers plays, then I think that could be a tempo changer. Because I think, in my opinion, Flowers is the better choice to play quarterback than Murray.
Yeah, I love Flowers in South Florida. That dude was exciting.
I do too. And I think, when you look at Murray, I just don't feel that he's very I don't know why he got such a shot in that first game when he was playing so poorly, why you didn't put Flowers in. But I think if Flowers plays, I think the Vipers have a very good chance. But if he doesn't play and they do the same thing, I think Seattle will win this game.
All right, next up, the final game of the week, the New York I almost said the Gardeners, the New York Guardians. That would be an awesome name, too, by the way. Will travel to D.C. to play the Defenders. Defenders quarterback Cardell Jones. I think we're going to find out a lot here because we know that when he was in the NFL, preseason he struggled. I think this Guardians defense, especially the secondary, can give him trouble. But I'm going to pick the Defenders to win this game in a close one just because I think if New York can't run the ball, I don't think that they're going to be able to keep up with DC points-wise. I don't think Matt McGloin is going to be able to throw up 30 points here. I'm going to take the Defenders in a close game, and I think the difference is going to be New York not being able to run the ball. If they could run the ball for 100 yards or so, I think they could win the game, but I'm going Defenders.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Defenders. And the reason is exactly what you laid out, but also I think this game being in D.C., that was a great crowd, a great atmosphere. If they have that atmosphere along with, Cardell Jones playing well, and I'm just not – New York Guardians need to be able to run the football. I'm just not convinced they can based on what I saw. So I think this is going to be another one of those 30-17, 31, 31-20 kind of games. I think Defenders are one of the top three teams. I think this is the second week that we'll find out a lot, but I just really like this Defenders team. I thought they were a decent team defensively. They're a decent team offensively. They kind of like St. Louis. While St. Louis I think has a great defense, Defenders I think have a good defense. They have a good offense. They maybe don't do one thing that's like over the top great, but everything they do well. And I think that's going to be the difference in this game.
Well, I think the one thing I want to see this week is I want to see what the Guardians do offensively against D.C. And the other thing is I want to see if St. Louis's defense is that good or if maybe Dallas's offense was that bad. My guess is probably a little bit of both. And then the other exciting thing to me is just to see how many people are at these games and what kind of atmosphere is. And let's face it, we've both coached indoor football before, and most times your best crowd is the first game of the year. So if they can build off this and the crowds get bigger and the TV audience stays the same or gets bigger, I think there's really something here, Brian.
Yeah, and here was the thing about the crowds is when you came out of these first games, there was definitely an excitement about it. Not only for people that watched on TV, but people you saw tweets and different comments from people that were at the games that said, "Man, this was this was a good experience, had a lot of fun. So you build off that, and if they build off that and they turn this thing into where, again, DC Defenders have that great crowd. We already know, Seattle's first game, we know what kind of crowd they're already building to. So if you're generating that excitement, now people that are watching on TV for a second week in a row, or maybe they didn't watch last week, but now they've heard all this buzz and they turn it on. If you have these great crowds and you still are playing this quality football, that's going to continue the buzz to where I think for going back to the AAL, the football in the first week was, it was okay. It wasn't great. The crowds on some of these games, and I remember vividly Birmingham. The crowd in Birmingham, I mean, it was not good. And then the second week, the football never seemed to get better, and the crowds never seemed to get better. So now all of a sudden, it's kind of like, what are we doing? So I think that it's real key for them to keep this momentum going, and I feel like from a crowd standpoint, they're going to, because we talked about Seattle's crowd. From what I read the other day, DC Defenders, I mean, their season ticket sales were outstanding. Seattle, had the biggest season ticket sales, I think, of all the teams in the league. So there's definitely a generated buzz, and keeping it looking good on TV is the key, because TV is such a key to all this, because people look on TV and they see the crowds. Well, now they want to go to the games. They want to follow this. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. I'm actually excited to watch week 2.
I've already told my kids from 2 to. Yeah, me too. Because I've already told my sons. I said Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 8. And this is the thing. Austin, he's a little older. He loves to watch football. And he's decided he's a Battlehawks fan, and instead of going to his friends, at 4 or 5 o'clock, I said, "You want to go? I'll take you down now." And he's like, "No, I want to wait till after the game." So he's waiting till after an XFL game to go to his friend's house. Yeah,
and that's a generated buzz and a generated excitement that this league is giving people right now. Let's be honest. You and I never once talked about doing an AAL show.
No.
We never once talked about it, but yet we've had the conversation about the XFL, and we even said, let's wait until see what happens week 1. And that was the first thing you and I talked about the other day. It was, man, we definitely got to do this, because this is worth the time and effort to watch. It's good football, and you're not watching a game with 3,000 people in the stands.
Well, and I think the difference here is Vince McMahon brought in Oliver Luck to be the commissioner, and I've gotten a chance to interview Oliver Luck a couple times on other shows, like a year and a half ago. Number one is the fact that I think the first time I interviewed him was 2 years ago, and that's when they were just in the planning stages. So this is not something like the first XFL, which only took a year to plan out, or the Alliance League, which I think started planning out in freaking October. This is something where they've had 2 years. They've had a panel of people. And I mean, how cool was it to watch Jerry Glanville coach on the sideline with his hair colored in?
Yeah.
I mean, I love watching Jerry Glanville.
And here's the other thing about this league is, and they were smart, is look at the coaches that are in this league. You've got some great coaches, great innovative coaches, but you've also got Jerry Granville, who's not only a great coach, great defensive coach, but he's a character that people want to watch.
Yeah.
June Jones is a guy that people are going to watch. They know what he did and why everywhere he's been.
Yeah.
Hal Mummy. So you've got these people that and listen, for Seattle, I mean, again, we don't know how good or bad Seattle's going to be. We look at their roster, we're not impressed, but Zorn is their head coach in Seattle. Are you kidding me? I mean,
shouldn't they have Larson as the OC?
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, my goodness, I mean, that wouldn't be a bad move. But here's the thing: Zorn as their head coach, that's credibility in a Seattle market.
Yeah,
I'm 4 hours from Seattle, and I mean, I've already seen people with Seattle Dragon stuff. So I'm 4 hours away from there. So yeah, there's a generated excitement of the league, but also they were smart in people they hired. The players that they have in this league are good, solid players. They're not guys that are never going to sniff the NFL. There's a lot of players in this league that you may see in training camps and possibly on an NFL sideline here very soon.
Unless they got a contract, because they can't get out of an XFL contract to go to the NFL without the XFL's approval. And I know Josh Johnson in November, the Detroit Lions offered him a contract, and the XFL said no.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true. Which that's also very interesting too. So, on one hand, the XFL has talked about, we're not competing with the NFL, but at the same time, they don't want to be known as necessarily a developmental league to the NFL too. So there's definitely a little bit of give and take here. So I think that makes it even more fun to watch because, like I said, I think this league has a lot of potential. A lot of potential.
Most definitely, so and we will follow it all year long, just like we do the NFL and the CFL. And this show will be live every Wednesday night at 10 o'clock Eastern, correct, Brian?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I will be there.
All right. So you can get that live at 10. And tomorrow, if you're listening to this on Thursday, if you're listening to it Friday or Saturday, you can already go to thegruelingtruth.com, where we'll have game preview articles up every Friday. Every Monday, we will have, our takeaways from the XFL on week 2 this week. You can see that on Monday. On Tuesday, our XFL Power Rankings will be out. On Wednesday, the XFL show with me and Brian. On Thursdays, we'll have the XFL quarterback rankings. And then again on Friday, the game previews. So if you go to thegruelingtruth.com, you can get that all the time. And we got some connections to some XFL players. I may do some 10 or 15-minute interviews with players during the day and post them also. You can follow us at Grueling Truth. And Brian, do you have a Twitter?
Yes, I do.
You might as well throw it out there. Maybe get you a few more followers.
My Twitter, as a guy that is
you're trying to remember right now, aren't you?
Yeah, B_Schmidt 71.
There you go. And also, if there's enough interest, we get enough listens, we can actually take callers during the show. So just send us a direct message or tweet us at Grueling Truth if you would like for us to add that to the show. And if you have any questions for me or Brian or any comments about the league, you could tweet them out to at Grueling Truth or send us a direct message there. But, Brian, any final words?
No, I'm telling anybody that has not watched the XFL yet, didn't watch it last weekend, DVR it, watch it live, whatever, but take the time to watch it this week because I got to tell you, you're going to be impressed. I really believe that.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is the way the season ends, I think, in April, there's only 1 month till the CFL starts after that.
I know. We're in constant football.
Yeah, it's the way it's supposed to be. We get 1 month off. We could have a Spokane Shock coaches show or something.
Probably could.
Yeah, probably could.
I don't know why nobody thought of this, only 1 month off for football thing before. I wish they would have thought about this sooner.
Well, you know what? It's been brought up on other teams you've been with, and you've obviously dropped the ball every time.
No, I'm usually voting for it, and I got other people looking at me like I've got 3 heads. So.
Oh, okay. You don't, do you? Because last time I saw you only had 2.
No, I thought I was growing a 3rd head, but it wasn't. So.
You didn't get my joke about heads, but all right.
No, I got it.
All right, guys. Make sure you check us out next Wednesday night on thegruelingtruth.com. You can also hear us live on Spreaker. You can hear the podcast form of the show on our iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. Basically, anywhere you find podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. You can listen to our NFL show live every day at 1 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you go to Facebook and like The Grueling Truth. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth. So, for Brian Schmidt, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.